Welcome back to the Faith Forward podcast. John Ackerman, joined today by my good friend Lee Towns.
Good to be here.
Twice in one series, man. This is fun.
I know. This is a lot of fun.
It is. It is. So if you've been tracking with us, this is week 6 of 9 in this series from the book of 1 John, near the end of the New Testament. We've called it Illuminated, this word that John uses in one of the translations, at least, of the life that we are meant to have, where Jesus is the light in our life that not only illuminates where we are going and what we should be doing, but illuminates the life within us, that he is constantly expanding and purifying. And Lee, you're going to talk about a lot of that aspect today, that the life that Jesus invites us into is not primarily a performative one, but as we accept his invitation to this life, there are some things that we are invited to start doing with him. So, as is often the case, we strongly encourage you to listen to the Sunday message itself, but also knowing that some of you did listen to the Sunday message, but it's now days, weeks, months later. Lee, would you give us a quick synopsis of what you're probably going to say, since it's Thursday and Sunday hasn't happened yet, what you think you're going to say on Sunday, and then we'll dive into the practical.
Yeah, I'd be glad to do that. So, one of the things that we love about our relationship with Jesus is the idea that salvation is a free gift from God. And one of my favorite ways of talking about the gospel when inviting someone to leave the kingdom of darkness and come into the kingdom of light, to cross that line of faith and become a follower of Jesus, is to talk about the fact that there are so many ways in our world that sell us the idea that if I just do the right thing, then I am a good person, whatever good is defined as. And so then we have those counterfeit options that are selling us the notion that we work our way into salvation. Whether that's I do enough good deeds, I give enough money, I attend enough meetings, I read enough, whatever it is, it's just do. And one of my favorite things to say to someone that's, trying to make a decision or wrestling with the decision is this: you can just write over or beside the word salvation, done. Because it is. The work is done. It's over. Jesus did it. All the work is done. Salvation is God saying, here, you can have it. It's yours. You don't have to do anything. Just reach out your hand and take it. That's it. And I love that. And I preach that, and, I invite people into that. But what I want to be careful in telling people when they cross that line of faith, and what John reminds us of in this particular set of verses, is that while salvation is free and the work is done, salvation is not this pass out of work. It's not a check the box, this is done, put this on the shelf, and now I'll go and get it later, I go on with my life as it was. But instead, salvation is the gateway into the transforming work that it will be the rest of our life as we follow Jesus. And the danger is that we have this negative interpretation of work, and we go, oh, well, then here's the fine print, or here's the string that's attached, and we avoid that. And so then what we have is a false idea about what it means to live in relationship with God. So what happens for us is that salvation is not caused by something we do, but it sets in motion things that will happen that we do. And they're good things. They're great things. They're things that we would want to be true if we could see clearly before we made the decision. And once you make the decision and go into the process of doing that work, you look back at it and go, I'm so glad I've done this work. And if I had known this when I was wrestling with this, I wouldn't have wrestled. It would have been an automatic. So this idea of saying, hey, the work part of our faith is negative because work is negative is wrong. And so I want to confront that, or I want to speak to that. And John is actually challenging some of those ideas. In fact, he's laying out and saying, look, as you choose to follow Jesus, there are certain things that you not might do or that you could do. It's not optional activity. There are certain things you will do. In fact, you must do. He says it very, very strongly. And then he works through, I'm going to tell you 4 things, or I'm actually going to tell you 3 things. There are 4 things. I'll leave the 4th thing for Brian to talk about next week. But the first one he starts with, he just builds on where he's been. And this particular teaching, this session, starts in 1 John 2, verse 28. He builds on where he was, and he just uses this idea of abiding. That the Spirit of God lives in us, and we should abide in him. We should abide in God, build our lives in God. That's from the moment we say yes, followers of Jesus who are living in the light will build all of their life, not part of it, but all of their life in God. And so we break that out. We talk about that a bit, and we can dig into that in a minute. But so that's the first thing. Then the second thing is that we embrace our identity, that we are children of God when we cross the line from the kingdom of darkness into the kingdom of light. And there is a particular nuance to that that's really, really important that we dig at a bit, that is a prevalent heresy that is all over our modern culture as to who the children of God are. And John reminds us that the children of God are those that God names as the children of God. He chooses our identity. So in simple terms, what John says is, you are who God says you are. And what he says when you say yes, when you accept his free gift of salvation, he says, you're my child. And it's at that moment that we become children of God. And so there's something very powerful about that. He reminds us in the passage, and we talk about this in the message, he reminds us that then we embark on a journey. We don't know exactly where it all is going to wind up right now. And we have some hints and ideas, but here's what we do know, that God is going to do good things in us and produce something in us that will make us look like him. And so we start this journey of becoming like him. And then he leans in to the third thing that he says must happen as we lean into our decision to be followers of Jesus. And it's this, that we become more righteous. In other words, no, not in other words. Let me say it plainly, because I think we dance around this one. And I love how he says it, stop sinning. That's the deal. We stop sinning. And, it's one of those statements that's almost, to use modern terms, it's a mic drop. Like he's like, here's the thing. If you're a child of God, stop sinning. Full tilt. Stop. Like, that's all there is to it. And so he leans in and says that when we live in the light, it requires that we become righteous people, that children of God, their behavior, and we'll lean into that a bit as we talk about it, but their behavior is different. And their behavior, day by day, week by week, month by month, is increasingly righteous. Now, no one is righteous, no, not one. Paul writes that in the earlier part of the New Testament. But all of us, there's a handful of things that are true. And man, this is one of those places, John, I could get way down in the weeds time-wise. But what we know is that before God, when we say yes to salvation, God does this thing, the word that the Bible uses and translates into English is imputed. Like he gives us his righteousness. So when God looks at us, he sees his son, he sees the righteousness of his son. But what that also means is that because the Spirit of Jesus lives in us in the form of the Holy Spirit, that his son is beginning to impose his way on us. And so we are becoming more and more righteous. We will not be fully holy as God is holy until we stand before him and imperfection takes on perfection at his command. But we are moving in that way. We are children of God who are maturing just as human children do, and progressing towards a Christ-likeness that ultimately will be holy as God is holy. So that's the overview, man, without me getting down in the weeds too much.
I'm proud of you.
It's a fun passage. It's a fun passage. Hard passage, but a fun passage.
And so the practical application may at once seem both obvious and uncomfortable. Like, great, here's a whole episode about how I'm falling short, and I'm sure John and Lee are going to give me 12 steps to get my act together. And yes and no.
It's only 6.5.
But I think the way Right? As we've often said before, what we do matters. The way we do it matters more.
Yeah.
And the way that I think we have often tried to go about the process of becoming righteous has been incredibly well-intentioned.
Absolutely.
And to the best of our own ability, may have even been very well thought out. But depending on how we've tried to go about this process of living the life that John describes, there are some fundamental flaws that I think leave many of us feeling like we're beating our head against the metaphorical wall and result in the kind of frustration that results in the kind of backsliding that results in the shame, anger cycle of why can't I just get myself up there? I went again. And I think what this passage calls out and what we're going to try to talk through here in a very practical way is there is a way that Jesus is inviting us to live that is actually doable.
Right.
And that will create, that will foster, that will produce the life that Jesus said we are meant to live as those that follow him.
Right.
And so this is not about the steps that you have to take to get your external world in order to clean yourself up. This is going to be, not surprisingly for those of you that have been around for quite a while here, this is going to be a journey into the inner world.
Yeah.
That when we understand our inner world and we begin to make change and affect change in our inner world, the outer world starts to come into alignment.
Right.
So, Lee, as you started on Sunday, probably, living in the light requires that you build your life in Christ. And you talked about the significance of this word, living in the life, living in the light requires that you build your life in Christ. The significance of the word abiding, remaining, dwelling, that this is an active presence in your life.
Yeah.
We talked about how you come to this life with God, you accept the sacrifice of Jesus and the reality of Jesus, you accept this adoption into God's family, and Jesus begins to do this work of conforming you to his own image. And I think there's a part of us that is often the case as humans, we swing to extremes. So either this process is supposed to happen and I'm supposed to work really, 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 really hard to make it happen.
Right.
Or this is just going to be sort of like background computer process and I can go off working on whatever I want to.
Right.
And the progress bar is eventually just going to hit 100% on its own.
Yeah.
And neither of those is the life that Jesus calls us to.
Right.
Neither a life of striving and self-performance, but also not a life of passivity. You've heard Pastor Brian using the analogy of the rowboat and the raft, both of which we attempt at different times in our life, neither of which is the invitation that Jesus makes to us.
Right.
Abiding, remaining, and dwelling is active.
Yes, very much so.
It is relationally active. It is attentionally active. Our attention is active. Our full attention, cognitive, emotional, physical, is active. And so when you talk about building your life in Christ, it's not the religious rote.
Right.
Nor is it the passive completion bar.
Right.
But it is, excuse me, I'm going to be okay today. It is the active integration of your life with his, so that his life holds sway.
He capitalizes on an idea that he introduces earlier in his letter that Jesus will return, and of course he is writing to a church, a group of people. If I just do a little bit of context for a minute, he's writing to a group of people that are being pulled apart because of differing theologies or different ideologies, and we've identified, and he's identified the opponents of the gospel as heresy or false teaching or antichrist.
Yep.
And so he's writing and he goes, abide, remain. And that word in the original language is translated in innumerable ways. I mean, there's a whole bunch of different words that when that word shows up in the text that get used for it. But more common, abide, remain, dwell, make your lodging. Those are kind of the more common translations of it. And so he's saying two things to them. One, he's saying, don't give up on where you started.
Yeah.
You know, I know you hear all this over here. Stay. Don't wander over here. And so there is just a very pragmatic appeal there of don't give up on this decision that you've made. But then there is the other nuance of that, and that is, the analogy, I keep coming back to it in my head, and I'm probably not going to say it exactly right, and I know every analogy has its own flaws and breaks down at some point, but I keep coming back to this image in my head of building a house that Jesus would live in, and our life, we're now on a mission to build a house that Jesus would live in. That's what that abide idea is. I'm dwelling in Jesus in such a way that, you know, I think about it even in terms of very tangible things in my own life. You're in this. I mean, the house you're living in is increasingly becoming more like you. Like when I first moved in, if you came over to my house the first weekend I moved in, it didn't look anything like me. I mean, it was just a house with a bunch of boxes everywhere. Now, having lived there for years, you know, it's got my colors and it's got my smells and it's got my temperature. It's got a layout that's mine, and it's unique to me. It's a house that you go, Lee lives here. Like whether it's you see my picture on the wall, my family's picture on the wall, or if I took all the pictures down, you could probably put together, I think Lee lives here. This looks like Lee. That's the abiding aspect, that we are building a house in which Jesus lives, that our life, all of it, not just little parts of it, that all of our life is a place that Jesus would occupy. And I want him to occupy that. That's the abiding aspect of that. And no, it doesn't happen day one. It doesn't. It happens over a lifetime of being in an active presence with Jesus. And what I love about the analogy, again, I know it breaks down at points and it may not be perfect, but what I love about the analogy is in my mind, I think about how I live in my house, and you probably can do the same, and yours is probably a better analogy because you've really rebuilt your house around who you and Brooke are. But I think about how I live in my house and how it looks this way today, but if you come to my house next year, you know, the furniture will be in a slightly different place. There might be different things on the wall. I might have painted an aspect of it. And I just imagine in a spiritual picture, Jesus moving the furniture in my life. Like that's what he does. And it's not I got up one morning and said, hey, you know, I need to blow out this wall and Jesus gets a bigger bedroom. You know, it's not that, because that's the striving part. But it's that Jesus goes, hey, let's move this over here. Yeah. Hey, we don't need this anymore. Let's just take this out. And so you feel in that tone of abiding, you feel that Jesus is the inhabitant of my life, and he is building the house he wants to live in, so it looks like him.
Yeah. There's a friend of mine that told the story, sort of playing off this analogy. Bought this house, moved in, began to set it up the way that they thought they wanted it, and then catastrophic rain. And they had 2 feet of water on their main level. There's no basement. And so the house is just ruined. Yeah. Right. It's fixable, but so you got to pull all the drywall, you know, from 2 feet down. And but he said the amazing thing that happened was the architect that came to work with them said, you have a rare opportunity to do something with your house that not everyone gets to do. He said, so here's what I want you to do. I want you to draw on a sheet of paper the position of the exterior walls of your home, because those are fixed. Right. He said, and then I want you to get rid of everything that's inside. And I want you to decide what you would like the interior of your home to look like. Yeah. Because I think for some of us, and I was thinking, as I looked at your message, I was thinking about what are the different ways that people might hear this.
Yeah.
And so some people are going to hear a message about God expects you to be righteous and God expects you to become righteous.
Yeah.
And they're going to hit that striving place of, right,
Yeah.
I'm going to go blow out the walls to give Jesus a bigger bedroom because that's what Jesus deserves, whether he wants it or not.
That's right.
And so some of us are going to hear this message and go, well, it's time to start making behavioral change. Here's the list.
Right.
I'm glad you brought this up in February because I started working on this on New Year's and I've already stopped, my resolution list. And so this is the pick me up I needed. That's not primarily the invitation, though for some, the message that was needed was it's time to start making changes.
Yeah.
But for others, the invitation wasn't that you need to start fixing a whole bunch of things. It's keep going.
Right.
Keep going because you know that there were changes that needed to be made and you were in the process of making them and got discouraged, got overwhelmed, got complacent, whatever the case was. And the way that you might need to hear this message is not, oh, here's all the ways I'm falling short. It's keep going.
Yeah.
You're going in the right direction. But I think also using this house analogy and going back to the story of my friend, some of you might not realize Jesus may be up to more than just moving the furniture.
Right.
Not that you have to go blow out a wall, but he may have an image of your home that you've never considered. And this was actually part of my experience with the house that Brooke and I are working on. Hi, Brooke. When we first started our renovation, I had a hard time imagining anything other than what was already there.
Right.
Here's where the walls are. Here's where the doors are. Here's where the windows are. My job is simply to replace them with something better.
Right.
And I thankfully had a couple of people, and my wife Brooke is one of them, who said, what if we did something different? And there was a part of me that went, well, I don't understand what you mean. There's a wall here. The wall needs to be here because there's a wall here.
Right.
But for people that understand structural loads, that understand design, they're able to see the potential of a space in a way that I wasn't able to at the time. I'm now growing in that ability. And so part of what I'm hoping some of you may hear is this work that Jesus is up to may not just be the moving around of furniture and the changing of paint colors. He may have an image of the space that you have never conceived of because your conception has simply been, I'm going to replace this with something that's just better but is the same.
Yeah.
And what Jesus is often up to is not just replacement but transformation.
Yeah. And I don't want us to belabor this too long because there's some other good stuff that we want to get to, but I just want to point out, I love every now and then I think it's good for us to absorb the tone of language, if that makes sense. And what I mean by that is, listen to these two words, work, abide.
Yes.
They feel different, don't they? I mean, that, and the invitation of Jesus is not go to work.
Yep.
Even though there are things we're going to do, it's live with me. Yeah. It's abide with me. Be with me. Yeah. And I think it's important for you to feel that distinction so that you fight that urge to go, all right, well, okay, it's time to renew a resolution and go back to work, or, okay, buckle up, buddy, because demolition day is tomorrow. Yep. The word is abide. None of that sounds like demolition day. None of that sounds like sweat equity. Yeah. It sounds like being with Jesus. Just being with him, and let him move the stuff as you live together. Yeah. Like my house, your house, there are moments where, I've done some hard work on it. Like I moved all the furniture in and placed it, right? And you've replaced walls, moved walls. Yeah. But an awful lot of the ethos of my house, I don't even remember the work. Mm-hmm. It's just there, right? I mean, the picture's there, and I guess I did get a hammer out and put a nail in a wall, but I just put a picture there, or that color of that blanket that lays right there, I just threw that on there. Right. Like and I think it's important that the call to righteousness is not a call to constant effort. Yeah. It's actually a call to abide.
Yeah. Yeah. With a God who is already pleased with you.
Yes. Yes.
And who already likes you. You use the phrase, wait till dad gets home on Sunday.
Yeah.
And again, I know for some of us, the concept that we have of God may be similar to the concept of that wait till your father gets home,
Right.
especially if it was a father who was perpetually displeased or just always seemed to come home angry or expecting the worst or what went wrong this time and who do I need to correct so that I can get my 5 minutes of peace.
Exactly.
That is not your father.
Not at all.
Your father is not someone who will eventually like you and be pleased with you once he beats you into shape and you stop doing all the things he doesn't like.
Yeah.
Some of us need a reintroduction to the Father and to a Jesus who actually likes you and is already pleased with you and is set on the restoration and renovation and fulfillment of who you are. I liked my house the day I moved in.
Yeah.
And I love what our house is becoming. That's how God feels about you. You're his kid from the moment you said yes. He likes you. He doesn't just have to love you. He actually loves you, and he likes you, and he's pleased with you, and he is inviting you into a transformed life that you could not have imagined on your own. So this isn't the get your act together message. This isn't the get your act together because God's disappointed in you message.
Right.
This is also not the, well, God will just take care of it and you go on your merry way.
Right.
Abide.
Abide.
Abide with the one who loves you.
Yeah.
So that means we have to spend a couple of minutes talking about what it actually means to be his kid.
Yeah.
And then we're going to get practical.
Yeah. So what does it mean? John hits that moment. So the construct of these verses from 228 to 310, he starts with almost an overview, but he reminds us all of this comes out of the abiding. But then as he pivots to the beginning of chapter 3, verse 1 and 2 and 3, he has this interjection that if you don't get it in context, it almost feels like Tourette's moment, So where did that come from, kind of thing? So he leads with, consider this. Look at how much God loves us. Like that's his interjection there, and it anchors the abide so that you become, keeps you from thinking, oh, he's here for devastation. So it reminds you, oh, this is based in love, and then it's going to tie and lead us into what will follow. But in that, one of the things I think, there's a couple of really significant things that I think is important for us to see as we embrace our identity. The first one is this, that we are a child of God, and we are so not because we chose to be. We are a child of God because he calls us his child. And that defines our identity, because we function entirely different as a child than as an acquaintance. I mean, it's a whole different deal. And we can get into all the nuances of that. We've got classes and stuff that dig into that, conferences that dig into the identity piece. And so I'll just leave that there, that there's all kinds of nuances to that. But the important thing I want you to hear, and I think that John is reminding us of, is he has chosen that. So the adoption analogy, while John doesn't talk about adoption, in this passage, the adoption analogy is very clear that we weren't born into this family like natural birth by the decision or will, of natural process. But instead, we have a father who looked at us and said, I pick you. I choose you. And in choosing you, I'm not just picking you to be on my team. I'm giving you my name. Here, you now are a child of God. That's profound, and man, is that really significant. Now, the other thing I think is important is to be a child of God is different than being made in the image of God. And here's where John's confronting a heresy, and it's a heresy that lives in our culture and needs to be confronted by those of us who are followers of Jesus. If we understand the gospel, we understand this, Not everyone who is living is a child of God. That's not a blanket statement. We are not all children of God. All humanity is not children of God. All humanity is imago Dei, made in the image of God, but they are not children of God. John, in his first book, in the Gospel of John, in the very first chapter, says this, that as Jesus came and dwelt among us, to those who believed in him and accepted him, to them he gave the right to become children of God. So God makes the invitation to everyone. Here, I'll choose you. I want you to say yes to me, but only those who say yes will be the ones who get my name. So you, having said yes, are unique and you're different. You are a child of God. You have his name, and that defines who you are. And then as he progresses through his thinking on that, he reminds us that children of God are people in process. We don't know now. Like we know we're pursuing something. He says, dear friends, we're already God's children, but he has not yet shown us what we will be like when Christ appears. But we know this, we'll be like him. We don't know what that means. So in saying that, he's going, you're moving towards this, but you can't see the end. You're in process. And so I'll leave that there. I could go on and on and on,
but this really is the lens through which we have to view the initial invitation that we open this with of there are some changes that probably need to be made.
Yeah.
Those changes that need to be made happen through this pivot point of sonship.
Yeah.
This is not get yourself together so that God will like you and approve of you and love you.
Right.
You are already liked, you are already loved, you are already approved of, you are already adopted. But part of what adoption means is not just you now legally have my name and so go on living as you were.
Right, right.
You now legally have my name, become my son.
That's right.
Live like my son or daughter.
So good, yeah.
Learn to become who I have already said you are.
And I love that because John reminds us, God knows who we will be when he appears.
Yeah.
We don't.
Yeah.
And so he's moving towards something in us, but he frames it all under he loves us.
Yeah.
In fact, I love how the NIV words it. He says, how great is the love the Father has lavished on us that we should be called children of God. And that's what we are. I mean, I love words, and the language just, it gives me chills as I'm talking about it right now. That God lavishes his love on us that we would be called his child. Mm-hmm. That's who we are. That doesn't overwhelm us.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to get lost here.
Yep. And so there are parts of that former nature that need to be addressed.
Right.
That we need to stop living out of that had been so familiar.
So true. So true.
And so it's through that lens that John is saying, look, you've got some stuff you've got to stop doing. Because if you're a child of God, if you have accepted the invitation, if you've said yes, and he's adopted you and brought you into his house and given you his name, this now isn't, it's not performative.
No.
And it's not behavioral, it's compatible.
Yeah.
There are some things that will no longer serve you. They never served you well to begin with, but they certainly won't serve you now because it's not who you are anymore.
Right.
Who you were, and we've talked about this in past series, who you were was an enemy of God.
Right.
You're no longer.
Right.
You're his son. You're in his house.
Right.
You're not only his friend, you're his kid. You have his name. You also no longer have to live as an orphan.
Right.
Because you have a home and a family and a father and love. Orphans have to learn to survive on their own.
Mm-hmm.
It is the unfortunate plight of an orphan. Mm-hmm. Those who were meant to care for you are no longer present for whatever the reason was. Mm-hmm. You have to survive on your own. You have to do the best that you can on your own because there is no one else.
Yep.
You are no longer orphans. You have been adopted. You've been given home. You've been given a name. You've been given love. You have been given access to all of the things that you need at the core of who you are. I'm not just talking about a roof over your head and clothes on your body and food in your mouth, but the deep, deep nurturing and assurance and safety and security and validation that is at the core of every human being to receive. You are now in a place where that can be received, but it comes through the one who loves you. Right. It does not have to be reached for. It does not have to be striven for. And so if we're looking at this invitation, this command really from John, there's some stuff that you have to stop doing.
Right.
You and I just banged this out without intending to before we hit record, but it's the reality of if we have a behavioral problem that we're trying to stop or that we're trying to resolve, what we really have is a heart problem.
Right.
And if we have a heart problem, what we really have is an identity problem.
Yeah.
There is still a part of us that is attempting to arrange for what we think we need as a self-sufficient orphan, rather than as an adopted, loved, liked, and approved son or daughter of God.
Yeah.
And you see this throughout the scriptures, that when Jesus talks to people about getting themselves cleaned up, to stop doing the things they need to stop doing and start doing the things they need to start doing, it's rarely ever through purely the lens of the will.
Right.
Just stop it and just start it.
Right.
Do better, do it right.
Right.
It's never addressed that way.
Right.
So just a couple of highlights so you know we're not making this up. Luke 6:45, Jesus says, a good man brings good things out of the good stored up in his heart. Yeah. And an evil man brings evil things out of the evil stored up in his heart. For the mouth speaks what the heart is full of. And in an earlier gospel, Matthew 15, verses 19 to 20, for from the heart come evil thoughts, murder, adultery, all sexual immorality, theft, lying, slander. These are what defile you. Solomon writes in Proverbs 23, verse 7, as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. And earlier in Proverbs 4:23 says, above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. Yeah. The changes that need to be made are not primarily on the outside of your life. They are primarily on the inside. And the things on the inside that need to change have to be addressed through this pivot point of identity. I am no longer an orphan. I am now a son, and I don't know how to live like a son.
Right. Yeah, and I think that, we so avoid the behavioral. It's an uncomfortable conversation, and John's addressing that. I mean, that's the heresy. The heresy has divided the behavioral from the attitudinal. In fact, and we talk about this in the message, the language of the text, depending on what translation you're using, most scholarly translations will use two words through the next few verses. When I say the next few verses, John makes a declarative statement in verse 3 and then follows it up with feeling like just repetition all the way down to verse 10. And I'll go back to verse 3 in just a minute, but most modern translations use the word sin and lawlessness. And the reason they use those two words is the original language has two different words. And they, at times in the New Testament, can be used synonymously or interchangeably. But because John uses them together, there's something that he's striking at, the differentiation. And one word has to do with breaking God's commands, like not doing what you're supposed to do and doing the things you're not supposed to do. That's the tension Paul felt in Romans 7. And that whole, he felt the wretchedness of who he was, to use old language. Oh, wretched man that I am. But and I'm going to rabbit trail here for a second, but one of the most compelling verses in the Bible to me, I always do that, one of my favorite verses, and then the next time I talk about the Bible, it's a new favorite verse, because there's so many of them that God has done things in my heart through. But this is one that's always so very profound to me. Paul eloquently breaks out his challenge between I do the things I don't want to do, and the things I don't want to do, those are the things that I do. I am just a shipwreck. I'm just a total mess. And he leaves you. If you stop at the end of that chapter, there's despair.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, wretched man that I am, who will deliver me from this body of sin and death? But then he follows it up with, therefore, chapter 8, verse 1, therefore there is no condemnation to those who are in Christ Jesus, for the spirit of life has broken those chains. I just, man, that's powerful. And so now back up to the main road. So when John writes about this, he says, here's one word, sin, that is the breaking of the law, the doing and the don't doing. And then there's this other word that is a rebellion against God. And the reason he uses those two words together and in contrast with each other or connection with each other is that the heresy of the day was, look, if you claim to be, if your heart is for God, if you love God, if you sing the worship song and do the things, whatever that practice is, it doesn't matter what sins you do, because God doesn't care about the body. That's irrelevant over there. That creeps into our culture today. That, look, all that matters is that we love God. So I've got the T-shirt and I say the words, and really, at the end of the day, I'd never speak bad against God because I'm for God. And so thank God for letting me win the Super Bowl. Right. All praise to God because he did good things for me. I mean, and we see that over and over and over and over and over and over and over. And I can just keep going with the overs because it is prevalent in our culture that the life doesn't match the claim because we disconnect the behavior from the heart. And John comes in here and he goes, look, lawlessness, sin, they're both sin. Sin is lawlessness, lawlessness is sin. Because your behavior is derived from your heart. So if your behavior's bad, your heart's bad. And if your heart's bad, your behavior's bad. And you can't disconnect them. When Jesus moves in and he begins to build the house, and I love this because the compelling call of God to us to be in relationship with him begins with love. And it comes from he loves us and he invites us to love him in return. And as we love him in return, we would never rebel against him who we love. And if we don't rebel against him who we love, we will behave as he behaved. And all of it is in sync. We're not compartmentalized people. We're not. And that lie of compartmentalization lives. It's a deadly snake in the grass in our culture. It is all connected, and out of the heart, as Proverbs says, flows a river of life. All of it flows out of the heart. And so so what John does is he then begins to just pound this, stop sinning, because children don't sin. And why do children not sin? Not because they work hard at it. Children don't sin because they love their father. And which takes me back to verse 3 that I told you I'd go back to. So he says this, and all who have this eager expectation, most translations use the word instead of eager expectation, hope. It's the only place in John's letter that he uses the word hope. And this place, he said, all of us have this hope. What's this hope? The hope is that Jesus will return. He's tying back to that. And that's where that little imagery of the old saying we used to do, we will wait till your father gets home. Our Father's coming. There's so many parts of that imagery that I don't have time to talk about, but our Father's coming not just to punish. He's coming because he loves us. That's why he's returning. Because he loves us, he goes to prepare a place for you, and then he'll come again, and he'll take us to be in that place with him. That's his promise. And we live with that hope. We live with that earnest expectation, and so we live prepared for that because we have a house in which we want you to live. And so we've built that house, and we can't wait for the Father to come back. We're eager for that. So all of us who have that eager expectation, all of us who have that hope, he says in verse 3, will keep themselves pure. And so the idea of purity, I love that he does that, not keep themselves away from sin, although that's a part of the idea. Purity is a pervasive idea, right? It's not just my hands are clean, but the whole of me is clean, right? My head, my heart, my hands, the whole thing. And so what he says is, this is the impact of Jesus, of abiding with Jesus, is that he loves us, we love him, we start to look like him because from head to toe, from inside to outside, we are in love with him. So we stop sinning, because sin breaks God's law. Sin is rebellion against God. All of it. And so the pursuit there is not do better. The pursuit there is be his.
Be his. And that really is the crux. Again, I know so often this mantra of don't sin, don't sin, don't sin becomes not only behavioral but intellectual.
Yeah.
If I understand, then I won't. And it's not that understanding doesn't have its place, but that's not the primary issue. The primary issue isn't a lack of understanding, because all of us understand the things we know we're not supposed to be doing, and we keep doing them.
Right. It's written in our heart.
Right.
I mean,
the issue is deeper.
In our heart. Yeah.
The issue is deeper. And so when you were talking about sons don't sin, it's not because sons understand the rules and have chosen intellectually and behaviorally to abide by them, both to avoid punishment and to receive reward. It's because the fundamental issue of sin, and you go back to the first time it happened in the garden, the fundamental issue of sin comes from the belief that I don't have what I need and I need to arrange for it myself.
Right.
That was the serpent's temptation to Adam and Eve.
Right.
You think you have everything you need in this perfect little garden, but look, there's one thing you don't have.
Right.
And don't you now understand that you are lacking and that you need to arrange for it yourself? Any place in your life where you are struggling with an external behavioral sin, it is rooted in an interior place in you that screams or whispers the message, I don't have something I need.
Right.
And I need to arrange for it myself, because either God won't give it to me or I'm not sure if he'll give it to me. And both of those represent the orphan's mentality.
Right.
Because I have to arrange for my own. I have to take care of myself because no one else will, because there's no one else there. And so if you're arm wrestling yourself at the external level, I have to stop this. I have to stop this. Why do I keep doing it? I have to stop this. Why do I keep doing it? It's because there is an internal wrestle between your identity as an orphan, where I have to because no one else will, because there is something I lack, and your identity as a son who not just intellectually assents to, but lives, abides, dwells in the reality that I have everything I need. And so I do not have to strive. I don't have to reach.
Yeah, and some of that, I'm thinking about our analogies that we use, and a further development of the adoption analogy, it just keeps coming back to me as I think about this, because living as a child is different than living as an orphan is so true and so profound. And I think about our view of an orphan and God, because I think when we go, I lack something, I need to do something for myself, we think like an orphan. We are actually pointing at the insufficiency of God some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
And so I think that's why John leads with abide. Like, you need to be in his presence, and oh, by the way, you need to know he loves us. Your orphan father is not Miss Hannigan from Annie. And if you think about the language of orphans in modern art, entertainment, whether it's Annie and Broadway or other pictures, the orphanage mother or the marm or whatever the word happens to be in that particular genre is not driven by love.
No.
He's getting a paycheck, is manipulating the orphans, and we, when we choose to buy the lie and say I lack something and I need to go fix this for myself, we've chosen to make God Mrs. Hannigan rather than our loving Heavenly Father, who has said, come into my home, take my name, take my inheritance. All of this is yours because I love you, not because I'm manipulating and using you. God is not a child labor, villain. God is a father who has room for his kids in his heart as well as his house. And so it may be the first point of victory over a pattern of sin in our life is to step back and be reminded that I have a heavenly Father who, whether I can see it or not, has everything I need for every situation in a place of love. And I say that carefully. You notice I didn't say for an outcome of prosperity. In a place of love. That he will take away and add in the things that will give us life abundant, not necessarily the things that will give us wealth or comfort, but that will give us life. And he has everything. I mean, everything. And that's the countercultural. I was thinking about the phrase earlier in the text, or the couple of phrases earlier in the text, where John talks about they don't know because they're children of the devil. They can't understand that, and my mind kind of wandered on that, and it reminded me, when we stand up and we go, look, stop sinning, and stop sinning looks like this. There's a whole bunch of people out there going, why are you taking away my freedoms? You guys are weirdos, Jesus freaks, whatever label they want to put on us. We ought to look different because they don't get it. And you said that, like with the house analogy when we were talking about that when you first moved into your house, you loved your house. My suspicion is that if you had known if somebody had said, look, John, here's what your house is going to look like, you'd have said, oh, that's awesome. But oh, by the way, for it to be there, here's all that you have to do. You would have gone, I don't know.
Overwhelming, for sure.
I'm not sure. We've had conversations about certain parts of it that if you'd have known those things, you'd have been like, I don't know. And you wouldn't have been terribly excited about that process. And yet you said yes, and God moves into our house, and where I'm headed with, tying back to that is, God's going to invite us to do things, and he's going to move the furniture around, so to speak. He's going to reconstruct us, and there are going to be things we have to let go of. There are going to be things that give us a sense of pleasure, self-sufficiency, satisfaction in the moment, that he's going to go, no, you don't need that anymore because I'm that. And if he told you in the front, look, here's the journey we're going to go, you would be hesitant to say yes. But in the process, he's going to take you through it. And in the process, he's going to lead you through the hard things, the challenging things. He's going to take away things that right now you look at and go, this is valuable, because pre-relationship with Jesus, you're in the dark and you don't understand how good the alternative is until you actually have the alternative. So now you look at your house, and it's still somewhat in process. It's always in process because you're living in it and it's becoming more like you. But in terms of the major project, you look at your house now and go, oh, I love this, right? I'm really happy with this. But you know that now because it is. Does that make sense? Not because it could be. And we, in following Jesus, need to realize that there'll be a moment where this great sacrifice that I'm making, that feels like, I don't know if I want to do all this work. I don't know if I want to let go of this thing. I don't know if I can trust God over here. When we do that, once we experience, we go, oh, this is so good. This is so much better than I ever thought it would be. Listen to the people who've walked with Jesus for some period of time and listen to their stories, and they'll tell you, I never could have imagined. That phrase gets used by followers of Jesus probably as much as anything. I never could have imagined. I never could have seen this coming. I did not know. And so in a culture that says, things like self-sufficiency and find your voice, and, all little phrases and parts of that are good and helpful, and God leads us to some of those experiences, but sells us that as the ultimate goal in our life.
Self-driven.
Yeah, self-driven. in a culture that says that, then when we go, hey, you know what? I'm going to let go and let God. Genuinely let go and let God. I'm going to say he's enough. I don't have to get my value from any place other than who my Father says I am. You know, in a culture that says something different, that is bizarre. They don't understand it because they're in the dark.
Yeah.
And those of us who live in the light have experienced it. And John's making a plea, and I would make the same plea in modern culture. Don't give that away. Do the process of abiding in Jesus that will lead to rearranging the furniture and changing the art and painting the walls and knocking some walls down and at times building brand new additions that aren't there. Do the work, because that is better than we can see. That's the sweet spot.
Yeah.
Don't give up. Don't give up. Don't give up.
Yeah. So as we wrap this up, practical application is to not feel like you have to rush out and do all this on your own.
Right.
Nor is it to sit there passively just waiting for God to renovate your house while you sit on your couch.
Right.
Right. Because this is an interactive partnership. This is a family you've been invited into.
Right.
And so it's taken us the entirety of the episode, but here it is yet again. What do I do first? Ask God.
Yes.
Ask God. Like you were just describing, he invites us into a process of transformation. Yes. He doesn't send us out with a chore list and say, get yourself together and then bring yourself back all cleaned up. Right. And he doesn't say, you don't have to do anything. I'll take care of everything.
Right.
He says, let's do this together. And so if you feel like I have a laundry list of things I need to stop doing or start doing, stop. And just ask God, your Father who loves you and likes you and is pleased with you. God, where do you want to start? What's the one thing that we need to start with? And allow him to surface that, allow him to reveal that, and allow him to provide a pathway towards what stopping or starting looks like, recognizing that it's not white-knuckling the external. It's renovating the heart. Where are the places in me that feel like I don't have what I need, that need to arrange for what I need, that believe in some way, shape, or form, this God who says he loves me would probably not give it to me, and so I have to take care of it myself. Or I don't know how to live without this. And let that be the beginning of the renovation. Not just, I'm going to get my behavior under control, because you're not going to get your behavior under control without dealing with that heart. And you're not going to get your heart under control if you continue to try to live like an orphan. And so if you don't even realize that you're living like an orphan, that's actually the place to start. That's the place to start. Not on the outside, but on the inside.
Yeah.
And so ask him where to start. And ask him what change would look like. And ask him what your heart needs as part of making that change. And ask him what you need to know about yourself as a son or as a daughter, or what you need to know about him as a father as part of making this change, so that from the inner it goes to the outer. It's a whole lot harder to try to do it in reverse.
I would just add this one little thing to it, and you're saying it. I just say it I reinforce it.
Yeah.
When you ask, God will speak.
Yes.
And what I would create as a habit in my life is when God speaks and says, let's move this, or let's change that, call it what it is, sin.
Yeah.
And confess.
Yeah.
Because John says, look, if you confess, he is faithful and he'll forgive you and cleanse you. Yeah. He'll go to work and doing it. But you have to start with going, God, I see this, and this is where I've tried to be you.
Yeah.
And that's rebellion. Or here, I see this is where I've put my confidence in something other than you. That's sin. It's sin. And the funny thing about the confession part is when we go and say, hey, God, this is sin, it's not like God goes, oh, that's a deal breaker.
Right.
I mean, God's like, okay, let's move on.
Yep.
But he wants you to identify it and say, this is not of me.
Yeah.
And so the habit of leading my response with, God, I recognize that's sin. Let's go to work on it.
Yeah.
that helps create for us, one, healthy relationship with our Father, and two, helps us start to break the practice of repetitive sin, and which is John is attacking that. And so when we learn to ask regularly, consistently, God, tell me, talk to me, we learn to hear because he's going to respond. And we learn to just say, yep, you're right, that's sin. Let's go. Then we put ourselves in a very malleable place for God to make us into the righteous people that he calls us to be.
So friends, thanks for being willing to take this journey. Thanks for giving us the space to talk about being in process, because we very much are. As Lee said at the beginning, all of us are still in the process of becoming who God says we are. And remember, who God says you are is his kid. He has this well in hand. You play an active role. Ask him what's next. So until next time, Lee, thanks for doing this, as always.
It's been a blast.
He's Lee. I'm Jon. We'll see you next week.